Munir Said Talib. He was found dead on a Garuda Airlines flight number 974 from Jakarta to Amsterdam on 7th of September in 2004. Munir flew to the Netherlands for study of international human rights and humanitarian law in Utrecht University. During the flights, he interacted with some passengers, for example, Polycarpus, an off-duty pilot who was on the plane and who upgraded Munir's seats from economy class to business class.
In Singapore, it is said that he had contact with this Garuda pilot, Polycarpus, who was very soon in the picture after the poison was discovered. This has not been proven in court. Polycarpus has denied that he has had any contact with Munir in Singapore. Polycarpus has received a permit to fly on this flight without being on duty. This permit was issued by one of the top people of Garuda. What is perhaps more interesting also is that there are rumors that Polycarpus had contact with Munir before he left, and that it was to check on which flight Munir would be flying and how and when the opportunity would be there. Munir had an economy class ticket, and he was offered during the short time between Jakarta and Singapore, he was offered business class seats by Polycarpus. That is not unusual in Indonesia. If you want to pay tribute to someone you see in the economy class and there are some seats vacant in the business class, then you want to show also your power as a person in Garuda. You can say, well, I have a special seat for you, you can sit here and that's much more comfortable, etc. So I think that Munir was not very surprised when he was presented with this business class seat.
During stopover in Singapore, Munir also met with another passenger who is also a medical doctor. His name is Tarmizi Hakim. And during the critical time, a witness told that Munir asked the flight attendants to ask for help from Dr. Tarmizi, who had previously gave Munir his business card. So the doctor, Mr. Hakim, was giving medical treatment for Munir. He was giving a calming feel for Munir. So Munir also met with another passenger, Miss Drupadi. Drupadi is a wife of a prominent civil society figure, H.S. Dilont in Indonesia. Miss Drupadi stated that she saw Munir already not feeling well at Changi Airport just before the departure time from Singapore to the Netherlands. Also, Munir met with Ongen Latui Hamalu, another passenger. Few years later, Mr. Latui Hamalu died mysteriously. The police believe that he was the most important witness of the poisoning of Munir.
I think that it has been in court that Munir changed his seats during the flight from Jakarta to Singapore, which is about 45 minutes. But we do not know for sure because Polycarpus denied any involvement in it. During that short flight to Singapore, Polycarpus was on the plane and he left the plane in Singapore and did not continue the whole flight to Amsterdam.
Munir, he was on economic class on his way from Singapore to the Netherlands. He had to go back and forth to the toilet including to lay down his body on the plane floor. And finally, he was found dead on board on his seat in the air of Hungary.
The investigation started immediately after the plane landed, maybe some 2 or 3 hours after it was found that he was dead. But the plane did not make an in-between stop because of that. So they flew on until Amsterdam, and there the Dutch jurisdiction went ahead, of course.
An autopsy carried out by the Dutch authorities or the Netherlands Forensic Institute showed that Munir died as a result of arsenic poisoning in his blood as well as in his urines.
Most likely this poison was administered in a small glass of orange juice during the flight from Jakarta to Singapore.
A year later, the prosecutor believes that the poison was administered during the welcoming drink through an orange juice, provided just before the plane took off. In response to the evidence provided by prosecutors as well as lawyers, the panel of judges of the Central Jakarta District Court concluded that the poison was administered through a fried noodle, where they believed that Polikarpus was the one and only person in the pantry opening up the aluminum foil of the fried noodle provided for Munir. The panel of judges of the Supreme Court concluded that the poisoning took place during the stopover in Changi Airport, Singapore. The symptom can be seen when Munir started to have stomach problems on the eve of departure from Changi Airport and worse during the flights from Singapore to Amsterdam.
In Indonesia, it's freely accessible in any drugstore. You can buy it to fight your red plagues in your house or something like that. He was still in the business class compartment at that moment, and he went to the toilet several times to vomit and to get off his illness, but he fell asleep. I think one of the other passengers gave him some painkiller, and it is known that he has died while he was asleep in his chair. So the cabin crew became aware of his death, presumably 1 or 2 hours later than it really happened.
There are some irregularities on the flights. For example, I mentioned earlier about the doctor who gave him calming pills that sped up the process of the poisons. And another example is another doctor actually. He's an elderly Dutch citizen, Lee King-Yan, who sat down beside Munir at the business class. Mr. Lee King-Yan's wife, in the meantime, sat down in the back in another class, in a lower graded class. Also, the manifest document of the Garuda Airways that seems to be inaccurate in registering passengers or number of passengers, or at least at the time we believe that there was one additional passenger who was not on the flight manifest document, and we called it the 15th passenger. Although 3 Garuda Airlines staff were convicted of the killing, there are credible allegations that those responsible at the highest levels of government have not yet been brought to justice.
In total, Polycarpus was convicted, the stewardess was convicted, and the top Garuda director was convicted for involvement in the murder of Munir.
Indonesian law scholars and human rights groups found that the trial was fundamentally flawed, and key prosecution witnesses also retracted their sworn testimonies and failed to testify in court.
We would like to support the human rights community in Indonesia in their fight for clarity, who is the real puppeteer behind this murder of Munir. And that's important for them and for the family, the relatives of Munir, but also in a wider perspective, it is relevant for all human rights activists that they know that in the end there is something like justice if you are being hampered or stressed.
So, and there was no problem in whatsoever involving Muhdi and Garuda. So the only thing that can explain the connection of the murder is with the state intelligence agency. This is primarily because during his life, Munir was very vocal, very critical, and he was the staunch military critics as well as the staunch intelligence critics, criticizing the draft law on intelligence agency that wants to give special powers for arrest, seizure, and other extraordinary powers for intelligence after 9/11. And he was also the one who regularly criticized the abuse of power by intelligence agency in arresting suspected terrorism without due process of law.